Did you know that in Westeros there are tales of men with green skin? Thousands of years ago, when the first men crossed the land bridge to Westeros, they quickly settled the land, building farms and homesteads, and in doing so, they had cut down weirwoods, which were the trees sacred to the old gods, an act which soon brought them into war with an elder race already present on the continent, the Children of the Forest, who worshipped the old gods. During this time, it is said that the wars went on until the earth ran red with the blood of both races. But eventually a peace was bartered when the first men and the children forged a treaty known as the Pact amidst the weirwood groves on an island sacred to the old gods and the children, known as the God's Eye. It is said faces were carved into all the weirwoods within the island so that the gods could bear witness to the historic agreement. And the sacred order of green men was created, and they were entrusted with guardianship over the island to tend to its sacred weirwood groves. It is believed that the order of green men are still living within the island to this day, but it is so well protected, few have ever successfully traveled there to see for themselves. According to the World Book and Old Nan, the tales of the green men claim they have green skin, and in some versions, they may also have antlers like a stag, though most maesters believe the tales are a conflation of men who wore green clothing and horned headdresses. In Brand 2 of A Storm of Swords, he hears a tale of a mystery knight with a weirwood device on his shield, and wonders if he might be a guardian of the God's Eye. "Maybe he came from the Isle of Faces," said Bran. "Was he green?" In Old Nan stories, the guardians had dark green skin and leaves instead of hair. Sometimes they had antlers, too. In addition to the green men of the God's Eye, the ancient histories have even more tales of men with green skin. Garth Greenhand was a famous High King of the First Men and progenitor of House Gardener, as well as many of the other noble houses of the Reach. He is also claimed to have had green skin, which is where the sigil for House Gardener is derived, which is simply a green hand on a white field. Garth was the High King of the First Men, it is written. It was he who led them out of the east and across the land bridge to Westeros. Yet other tales would have us believe that he preceded the arrival of the First Men by thousands of years, making him not only the first man in Westeros, but the only man, wandering the length and breadth of the land alone and trading with the giants and the Children of the Forest. Some even say he was a god. There is disagreement even on his name. Garth Greenhand we call him, but in the oldest tales, he is named Garth Greenhair, or simply Garth the Green. Some stories say he had green hands, green hair, or green skin overall. A few even give him antlers like a stag. Beyond the obvious similarities, with both having green skin and possibly even antlers, the thing that really connects the green men and Garth is their connection to the old gods. If you weren't already aware, the World Book gave us a huge information dump on Garth, which detailed some heavy connotations with trees. Garth was famous for making the land bloom, and planting the seeds which contained the beginnings for all the world's trees. His descendants of House Gardener sat upon a living tree throne known as the Oaken Seat, which grew from an oak Garth is said to have planted himself. Garth is also said to have planted the intertwining weirwoods of Highgarden, known as the Three Singers. So, in the tales, Garth was a planter of trees and weirwoods, and, like a greenseer, his descendants sat on a throne made from a living tree. And the tales also suggest he may have traded with the Children of the Forest, and he may have had green skin and antlers, while the green men were those sworn to protect the weirwoods of the God's Eye, after they had forged a treaty with the children, and they were also said to have had green skin and antlers. But then we also have the Green King of the God's Eye, who is a mysterious legendary figure who is simply mentioned in passing in the Riverlands chapter of the World Book, which could potentially just be another account of Garth, as he was a High King of the First Men, and is given a description similar to the Green Men of the God's Eye. So the Green King could simply be another account of, or epithet for Garth's legendary figure. And if that is the case, then we can see how they all kind of connect and overlap within the myth and lore of Westeros. But the one thing that has always bothered me is the green skin. It's a huge oddity and kind of stands out within the legendary accounts of ancient Westeros. If there is any truth to these tales, there are several wild possibilities. I have seen all kinds of explanations for this phenomena, from aliens to reptile people and everything in between. Of course, we know the Maesters give us the most likely explanation, that the green men are a conflation of an ancient group of people who wore green clothing and horned headdresses. And this could easily be the case. But my curiosity got the best of me a while back when I was discussing the creepy shade of the evening trees in Essos. You see, a race very similar to the children of the forest, called the Ipequebron, were once present on the continent of Essos, and there are a lot of hints to point toward the black-barked and blue-leaved shade of the evening tree being an associated version or cousin to the white-bark and red-leaved weirwood. And if you'd like to know more, I have a video linked in the description box below where those connections and similarities are discussed, as well as its connection to the black oily stone. And what is interesting here is that if the two trees are related, then the undying ones who have ingested too much shade of the evening are curiously affected with a strange skin coloring. The leaves had eventually turned their skin blue. So that made me wonder, if the shade of the evening tree is related to the weirwood and can turn one's skin blue, well then, maybe the weirwoods could have at one point caused the same effect, since the greenseers also ingest weirwood paste. Maybe the weirwoods in Westeros were at one point a natural color. Maybe they were green. In Catelyn 1 of A Game of Thrones, the weirwood tree is introduced to the reader for the very first time. Ned is cleaning ice in the godswood, and the old gods are described as the nameless, faceless gods of the greenwood. The blood of the first men still flowed in the veins of the Starks, and his own gods were the old ones, the nameless, faceless gods of the greenwood they shared with the vanished children of the forest. But with the old gods, we get a lot more than that. We have Greensight, Greenseers, Green Dreams, the Green Men of the God's Eye, Garth the Green King of the God's Eye. And that's a whole lot of green right there. But wait, there's more. In 2013, George R.R. Martin was discussing the 5-year gap, and during that interview, he referred to what was most likely Bran's introduction to and ingestion of weirwood paste as a green ceremony. But what I soon discovered, and I struggled with this for a year, worked well with some characters like Arya, who at the end of the Storm of Swords had taken off for Bravos. You can come back 5 years later, and she has had 5 years of training and all that. Or Bran, who was taken in by the Children of the Forest, and the Green Ceremony. So you could come back to him 5 years later. That's good. Works for him. You see, George R.R. Martin doesn't like to give things away in his interviews, so this green ceremony has likely already occurred, and the only thing close to a ceremony since being taken in by the children and Bloodraven was his wedding to the trees through the ingestion of weirwood paste. So this ingestion is most likely our green ceremony. And now this is where it gets interesting. The most common description of weirwood leaves are hands, as the leaves of the weirwood possess 5 points. Red hands, blood-stained hands, you get the idea. According to George R.R. Martin, when I used the hands metaphor, I was thinking that each leaf was divided into 5 fingers, smaller ones on the ends, 3 longer ones toward the middle. Spread your hand on a piece of paper and trace around it, and there's your shape. Well, what is interesting here is that if the weirwoods were originally green, then the leaves of the weirwood before this transformation wouldn't have been described as red hands or bloody hands. They would have been described, or referred to, as green hands. And that is exactly the name of Garth, Garth Greenhand. And the name of Garth, with his Greenhand sigil, may actually be a hint our author has been giving us all along regarding the nature of his green appearance. Renly Baratheon may also be providing us with some clues. In A Clash of Kings, he wears a green armor and an antlered helm. Its imagery is intended to be highly evocative of Garth, and when Renly is wearing his green armor and antlers, we see Catelyn describe his armor as the green of leaves in a summer wood. The king's armor was a deep green, the green of leaves in a summer wood, so dark it drank the candlelight. Gold highlights gleamed from inlay and fastenings, like distant fires in that wood, winking every time he moved. And not only is the Garth armor the green of leaves, it is also described as drinking the candlelight, similar to how the grove of the shade of the evening trees at the House of the Undying is described as drinking the morning sun. And if you've watched my video on the shade of the evening tree, which I've linked below, you will know that there is a connection between that tree and the black oily stone, and the black oily stone is also described as drinking the light. And from what we have learned about the shade of the evening tree, the blue substance first affects the mouth and lips, as we see from both Euron and the warlocks of Qarth. And when we look at the rumors of the Crannog men of the Neck, who are the people believed to have had the closest relationship with the children and the old gods, we see that there are these unfounded rumors of the Crannog men possessing green teeth. But knowing their close connection to the children and the old gods, if the werewoods had originally been green, it's possible these rumors of Crannog men possessing green mouths might have stemmed from an ancient reality. So, if true, if the werewoods were once green, well then something in the ancient past must have happened to cause this change to occur, and surely there must be some legendary account of something so significant. And sure enough, there is. If you take a look at the legend of the Grey King, it is said that he taunted the storm god, who lashed down with a thunderbolt, causing a tree to burn. And in A Clash of Kings, we see the leaves of the weirwood can be described as a blaze of flame. He watched the forest go from gray to green below him as light filtered through the silent trees. On his left, he could see tower tops above the inner wall, their roofs gilded by the rising sun. The red leaves of the weirwood were a blaze of flame among the green. You see, in the tales, the Grey King wasn't too fond of trees in his myth. Basically, all his greatest feats are just the killing of trees, which is very appropriate for a culture notorious for their need for lumber. But in legend, not only is he famous for the burning of that tree, but also for the slaying of two creatures, Ig and Naga. Ig was described as a pale demonic tree that feasted on human flesh, which is an obvious reference to a weirwood, as weirwoods have pale wood and were given human sacrifices during those times. Naga, on the other hand, was said to be a sea dragon, whose bones still stand on Old Wick as testament to the Grey King's deeds, although, with closer examination, the bones of Naga are also believed to be weirwood. And if you're interested in the topic, I have a video in the description box below. So, knowing the connections the Grey King has to weirwood in his myth, with the slaying of both Ig and Naga, and the fact that the leaves of the weirwood can be described as a blaze of flame, it's likely the tree the Grey King set ablaze could also have been a weirwood. So what we might be getting with this tale is a description of the transformation of the tree itself to a fiery red. Unfortunately, if weirwood paste now has similar effects on the skin, we might never know, because weirwood paste is primarily a pale white color, and the only human who might have ingested enough to have this phenomena is Bloodraven, who also happens to be albino. So, if true, then the Green Men and Garth were likely the equivalent of the Undying, greenseers who had ingested enough weirwood paste that their very skin was affected. So, who knows? Maybe the trees of the children weren't always bone white with blood-stained hands. Maybe they were originally more in line with nature, and something happened along the way, causing a change in the trees themselves. Well, that about wraps things up for today. Thank you so much for watching, and if you'd like to help my channel out, be sure to hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe. Thank you.